Hello and welcome to another Magic 2015 gameplay. Today we're taking a look at Dimir Discard, a blue-black synergy deck, and this particular list is based off of fellow YouTuber Hakim's list, so you guys should definitely check out his channel if you haven't already. Link will be in the description. I've made a few changes to Hakim's list, but the idea is still very much the same. We're trying to play a lot of creatures with good enter the battlefield abilities, like Liliana Specter, making the opponent discard a card. We've got Phyrexian Rager to draw a card, and we even have the Dinrova Horror, making the opponent bounce a permanent and then discard a card. So a lot of very good enter the battlefield abilities that we can abuse with a card called Undying Evil, which says a creature gains Undying until end of turn. And Undying says if a creature with Undying dies, if it did not have a +1/+1 counter on it, then it comes back to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. So not only does the creature become larger, but you also get to get back the enter the battlefield ability because the creature enters play again. So we get to make the opponent discard again or draw another card, and also make our creature larger. So this can save a creature in combat or from a removal spell. And we can also use it with our own sack outlet, which I'll get to in a bit. So the idea of the deck is to abuse those EDB effects, gain value from those, and just play a pretty normal tempo game with some cheap evasive creatures. And we also have a decent late game, lots of card advantage, so definitely a nice synergistic deck. But let's start from the beginning here. We've got Vapor Snag, a single blue to bounce a creature, and its controller also loses 1 life. Works very well with all our discard, because you can bounce a creature and then try and make the opponent discard that creature, or better yet, you can use a Brain Maggot to exile it. We'll get to that in a second. So just a cheap interactive card that works very well with the rest of the deck. Then we've got Think Twice for some card advantage. Just 2 mana to draw a card, and then we can flash it back from the graveyard for 3 mana to draw yet another card, and we will be up a card in the exchange. And works also very well with our next card, which is Talrand Sky Summoner. We get a 2/2 Flying Drake token whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, so it works very well with Vapor Snag, Think Twice and Undying Evil. Only playing 1 copy because it's not as awesome as in the blue-red decks that play even more instants and sorceries, but I think 1 copy is still well worth it. Then we've got Undying Evil itself, the centerpiece of the deck. We've got Brain Maggot as a nice hand disruption card that also works decently well with the Undying Evil, because by resetting the Brain Maggot we get to take another look at the opponent's hand and perhaps take something better. Then we've got the Specter, a nice 2-for-1, a 2/1 flyer, which is pretty decent, and then opponent discards a card. The Rager draws us a card. We do have to pay 1 life, but usually that's well worth it. Then we've got Graveborn Muse, and much the same as the Rager, it's well worth paying 1 life every turn to draw an extra card. We don't really want to have 2 of them in play because then we start losing way too much life, but 1 is manageable because we don't have any ways to gain life, so we really have to be careful. Then we've got Shadowborn Demon, which is a way to get rid of our own Graveborn Muses. Also works as a sack outlet because we can use it in conjunction with the Undying Evil to perhaps trigger another ETB effect, but also just a 5 mana removal spell that can attack for a few turns in the air for 5 damage, which is still very good. So a very synergistic card in this deck. Then we've got some late game cards here in Sheoldred. Makes the opponent sacrifice a creature every turn and we get 1 back every turn. And we also have Rune-Scarred Demon that can search up any card in our deck. Usually we get the second demon with the first one, and then get whatever else we might need. And then finally some multicolor cards here in Tidehollow Strix, a 2/1 Death Touch flyer. So pretty aggressively costed here. 2 power in the air for 2 mana is already decent, but then the Death Touch means we can block whatever large creature our opponent might have. And we can also use it with the Undying Evil to perhaps trade and then get it back as a 3/2 flyer, which is even better. And then Dinrova Horror, another great ETB effect here that can return any permanent to its owner's hand, so also works with enchantments or artifacts, which can otherwise be problematic for blue-black decks. So we can use this if the opponent has no cards in hand to basically destroy a permanent, or we can also use it with cards like Brain Maggot to get rid of something we really can't handle. And then the mana base, we've got 24 lands, 4 Dimir Guildgate, and then 3 more dual lands in Crumbling Necropolis. I'm going for the Necropolis here because it can represent a shock that the opponent might play around, but it's not very relevant. And then 10 swamps and 7 islands because we are pretty heavy black, as you can see here. So we want to make sure we have our second black source on turn 3 for the Liliana Specter. So that's the deck. Now let's play some games and see how it does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which is not great, having a 6-drop and a 7-drop, so I think I can try another one. And this is much better. We can go turn 2 Think Twice into Specter, which will reduce our opponent's hand size quite a bit. And then we can work our way up to Rune-Scarred Demon. Let's lead with Necropolis to confuse our opponent. Pause the turn. Opponent looks to be a green deck, maybe multiple colors, let's find out. Another forest, so could be a mono green deck. Alright, so no play turn 2. So let's go ahead and I think we can safely keep up Think Twice here, since we'll just go Specter and then the turn after play Guildgate, play another Specter, so we don't need to play the Guildgate right now. And let's see if the opponent has a Cultivate here or another 3-drop. And we'll just think twice in response here. Oh, it's the Beastmaster instead. So synergizes with beast creatures. So we're gonna have to try and break up those synergies by making our opponent discard some of those beasts. But this can be a problem if our opponent plays the Hexproof beast next turn. But here, let's just go ahead and play a Specter and see what our opponent discards. And there's a Fog, alright. This should not be in our opponent's deck to start with, but I guess better to make him discard it. 4 mana, is this the Hexproof beast? No, instead it's a Triumph of Ferocity, which will draw our opponent a few cards because it's tied with the greatest power as well, so opponent having a 2-power creature means he does get to draw a card every turn. But if we ever find a Vapor Snag or just a larger creature, then that won't matter, and our opponent's gonna have to discard a few cards as well, so not too worried about the enchantment. But hopefully we can eventually turn it off. We do have the demon as well. Alright, so here pretty easy just to play another Specter. Question is, do we play it main phase or not? I think we don't, because there's a very small chance our opponent has another Fog that he plays here. And it looks like he does not. So let's just play another Specter and then play our Guildgate. Opponent discards Titanic Growth, so a pump spell. And we'll pass a turn. Opponent draws an extra card. So while these Specters are good, they will have to keep up with whatever our opponent plays here, which is Arbor Colossus, which would be a pretty big problem if we didn't have the demon in hand, as it has reach and also destroys flyers when it goes monstrous. But luckily we do have the demon as well as the horror in the future. Just gonna take the 2 here. So we're pretty much forced to play the demon here. Yep. And let's do it main phase so we can still attack. And then we'll have to see how many Specters we want to sacrifice before letting go of our Demon. But for now, attack for 4. Our opponent does not get to trigger the Triumph anymore, because we now have a 5 power creature, so only draws 1 card. And plays an Elvish Visionary, which is the opposite of a Liliana Specter. And anything else? A Cultivate. So our opponent cultivating here means if we play the Specter, it's not going to be great because it's going to most likely make our opponent discard a forest. So we probably want to wait on the Specter if we have other options. So here I will gladly sacrifice a Specter, I believe, as it also negates our opponent's Triumph of Ferocity. Alright, so a few options here. Vapor Snag also interesting with the Shadowborn Demon, as we could possibly bounce it. So I think we start by attacking with our flyers. Not really interested in staying on defense. Our opponent could have the pump spell, but we also have a Vapor Snag, so not too worried. And I think I'll just play the Rager here and keep up Vapor Snag. Maybe we draw another land here. Alright, Undying Evil, also nice, as we can Undying Evil a creature when we need to sacrifice to the demon. Or we can just block and Undying Evil, although that's not as great. Alright, let's pause a turn with our instance up and see what the opponent does. Still doesn't get to draw with the Triumph. So I do want to keep this demon around for a while. 8 mana. Our opponent could still have a land in hand, but we're not sure. And there's a beast for the Beastmaster to grow. So creature with power 5 or greater gains vigilance. Opponent goes to attacks. And attacks with both. No, just the one. Alright, let's, I think, just block the elf. And if our opponent does have the pump spell, we have the Vapor Snag. Alright. So now we have to decide if we want to use our Vapor Snag end of turn on the opponent's beast. And I think it's decent. Yeah, let's go ahead and Vapor Snag this now. See if this works. It does. Opponent also loses 1 life. So we'll be dead to our demon attacking as well as our Phyrexian Rager, but let's just Undying Evil the Specter here, I believe. So we can sacrifice it and get it back with a +1/+1 counter, make the opponent discard again, and we still have the other Specter to make our opponent discard his final card. And just to make sure, well, now we know what our opponent's final card was. It was indeed the Hexproof Beast. And now he has to discard the other beast. And we can safely attack with everyone, and our opponent will be dead. Alright, so managed to triumph over a Triumph of Ferocity, which was not too difficult with a Shadowborn Demon. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand, which has 2 tapped lands, Undying Evil, Think Twice, and Specter, and 2 pretty expensive cards. This hand is not great because it has the 2 tap lands, but I think it's keepable. It's very much borderline, but I think I'll try it. If we draw a basic land here, this hand becomes a lot better. but I think it's keepable. It will take a while before we get to the more expensive cards, but Think Twice does help smooth out our draw a bit. Alright, there's a basic, so now we have the option of keeping up the Think Twice, or we could try and play the Specter on curve. Good luck, sir. And I think it's a little more important to play the Specter on curve here, so let's do that. There's of course the off chance of drawing more basics with the Think Twice, but if we miss, then I think playing this turn 4 becomes a lot worse. And if we do draw basics, then we have more basics for the Horror on 6, for example. Alright, 2 mana, Elvish Visionary in Junt colors. So let's see if our opponent has a Cultivate next turn. But for now we're just gonna play this Specter and hope our opponent doesn't kill it right away, so we can keep up Undying Evil next turn. Opponent has to discard a card. Not much he can do about it. But does have a lot of options with 7 cards in hand. Opponent discards a Crumbling Necropolis, alright, so could be perhaps more than 3 colors. Pause the turn. And do we see Cultivate or not? Of course, not blocking here. And tapped land instead, so no Cultivate. There's another basic, which is nice. And I think we can start by attacking for 2. See if our opponent has any removal spell. And we could Think Twice main phase here to try and hit perhaps a 2-drop we want to play. And given that we have a fair amount of 2-drops, I think it's worth it. But I'm gonna play the island first so we can keep up all the colors we want. Alright, Graveborn Muse. So let's just pause the turn here with double Undying Evil up. And take 1 damage. It's a bit unfortunate here that we can't really use all our mana if our opponent doesn't try and kill the Specter. But I guess there are worse things. Now hopefully we draw another land so we can go Graveborn Muse and keep up Undying Evil. So there's a Cultivate. Opponent have it after all. Just didn't have the other untapped land last turn probably. Alright, so looks like red-green. Not sure if there's a 3rd color. Alright, and there's the untapped land, so we get to go Graveborn Muse, keep up Undying Evil. But we can attack first. Put the opponent down to 16. And if he has an Anger of the Gods, then I don't think Undying Evil will help, because the creatures will get exiled. So I don't think that's a reason not to play the Muse here, as Anger of the Gods is still only a 2-of in decks that have it. But it's unfortunate that Undying Evil doesn't work with it. So let's see if our opponent has some big expensive card here, or if he tries to kill our board. Now that we also have a blocker for the Visionary, maybe our opponent has a shock he wants to use after attacking and we block. Instead it's an Ingot into Forest Banefire. Alright, this is perfect. Opponent tries to kill our Muse, we just Undying Evil it. And we get a 4/4 and still get to draw cards every turn. And now it's also out of Anger of the Gods range. Alright. Draw an extra card. There's a Brain Maggot. So we have a few options here. We can just run out the Dinrova Horror, but that does put our shields down a bit. I do like playing Brain Maggot here with our opponent having 4 cards in hand, just having played a ramp piece. And playing Brain Maggot also allows us to keep up Think Twice and Undying Evil. So I think I'll start by attacking, and then I will Brain Maggot and hope to see something we can take and plan around. Alright, so there's a Ground Assault, which is a removal spell, another removal spell, Mold Shambler, not too relevant here, and Arbor Colossus, which I think is the scariest card here since we don't really have removal ourselves. So I'll just take the Colossus and pause the turn, and we have another Undying Evil for a removal spell, although Undying Evil won't work on the Muse because it now already has a +1/+1 counter on it. So Ground Assault will take out the Muse, so that works. We could have Think Twice in response to maybe hit a Vapor Snag to try and save it. And here, let's see. Opponent still has 5 mana up. Yeah, I'm just gonna take it. And then end of turn, Think Twice. And we're still ahead on board. Now there's a Mold Shambler kicked, which is gonna try and destroy one of our lands. But let's make sure to use it first. And since that one's gonna die, might as well tap like this. It's a little bit unfortunate that we lose a land here because we do have a 7-drop in hand. But I guess we'll deal with it. Alright, so here we get to play Strix and keep up Undying Evil after attacking with our Specter. Opponent still has a Resounding Thunder in hand, which he can use to deal 3 damage to a creature or a player, or for 8 mana he can cycle it to deal 6. And our opponent will be able to cycle it next turn, but if he targets our Specter, we do have another Undying Evil. So let's just play the Strix here and pause the turn. Our opponent is dead in 2 turns with our current flyers. So it's likely that he does target one of our creatures. Could also target the Brain Maggot to try and get his Arbor Colossus back, which will block our flyers nicely. And then we can Dinrova Horror the Arbor Colossus. I'm just gonna take the 4 here. We could be dying to burn spells here, as a cycled Resounding Thunder is 6 and another one would kill us. Instead it's gonna try and kill the Brain Maggot, which I think I'll just Undying Evil at this point, as it can get the Arbor Colossus back once it returns in play, as our opponent can't play that one at instant speed. And our opponent just has a land. So opponent with 0 cards in hand, we can deal 6 damage here and follow it up with a Horror. Seems pretty good. I guess we could also just keep up Undying Evil, but our Maggot already has a counter on it, so we can't save that anymore. And if we draw land, we can play Sheoldred, so I think we just Horror, and I'm guessing make our opponent lose the Shambler. We could also target the Ingot here, but I think the Shambler is more relevant, since our opponent has plenty of mana to work with. So bounce that, and our opponent has to discard it. And we'll pause the turn. Not too many cards our opponent can have here to get out of this. Has to pause a turn, and I guess we'll take a look at our opponent's last card, which looks to be a land. Alright, so our opponent maybe flooded out a little bit, but we managed to grab his irrelevant card with Brain Maggot and protect it. And it's not like our opponent had a really poor draw here. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which has 2 tap lands, a Think Twice, 2 Specters and a Rager. So again, this is a hand where if we draw a basic, this becomes very good. And we also have a Think Twice, so I think I'll keep it. And if nothing else, we can play Think Twice, turn 3, and hope to hit some land drops. But we do have some 3-drops we can play here in the early game. Alright, up against an Elite Vanguard, so it looks to be an aggro deck here, which we could struggle with, as we draw another tap land, which is not really what we wanted. So we'll have to play Think Twice next turn into Specter. But that's the cost of playing a few more tap lands to make our mana a bit more consistent. Alright, so a Lone Missionary points towards the other side, and not really an aggro deck, but who knows. Alright, there's a basic, so now we have the option of playing Specter or Rager, which I think I'll do over playing the Think Twice, as we can play the tap land next turn plus a 3-drop. And I think I do want to play a creature that can block at this point. So I think I'll just play the Rager here and try and trade with one of our opponent's creatures, and then we can play the Specters and take our opponent's better cards, I think is the plan here. Of course, there's a risk that when we play our second Specter, our opponent doesn't have any cards left in hand, but I don't think that's very likely. So let's just pause a turn here. And we're just gonna try and trade some resources early, as we do have the card advantage with Think Twice plus a Rune-Scarred Demon. So we are the control deck in this matchup, but it looks like our opponent did not want to attack here, which is strange. But it's good for us. So let's just go ahead and play Specter, make our opponent discard. Maybe as a Raise the Alarm he wants to play here. Opponent discards Armored Ascension. Alright, so I guess our opponent is the Armored Ascension deck after all, which is problematic if we don't find a Vapor Snag. So we'll just pause a turn here. So I guess this kind of makes sense why he didn't attack, as he wanted to have creatures in play when he does play the Ascension. But he might be missing his 4th land drop, so it's also very likely he has another Armored Ascension in hand, and there's Vapor Snag, so we no longer care about an Armored Ascension without God's Willing protection. So we could double Think Twice here, or we could Specter and keep up Vapor Snag. I think I start by attacking with the Specter, as our opponent's not really wanting to attack us. Might as well attack him. And play another flyer here. See what our opponent has to discard. Discards an Arrest. Alright, that's fine. Not the greatest card against us. So now I'm actually hoping our opponent finds a 4th land for Ascension, but looks like that's not the case. A Missionary attacks. We could wait to find an Undying Evil to block, but I think that's a bit greedy, so actually we could block with a Specter, as our Rager can hold back 1/1 tokens from Raise the Alarm. And I don't think I will be attacking with both anyways. Alright, so that's a trade. Another Specter is always welcome. Let's start by attacking with one Specter here. We could also think twice and hope to hit a land for the Specter, but I think just playing a Specter is better. Make our opponent discard yet again. And there's a Resolute Archangel, alright, so a pretty expensive card there. And there's a 4th land into Armored Ascension, which is perfect. And we can just Vapor Snag that when it attacks. And I think I'll trade the Rager for the Vanguard now. I don't think our opponent is playing the tokens deck, so this is a decent trade for us. And their opponent now has a Vanguard in hand plus 2 unknowns. Now I will think twice main phase to try and hit our land drop. And we did. So now we can pause the turn with think twice and Vapor Snag up, attack for 4, opponent's at 15. And we're slowly getting towards our late game. Alright, so 5 mana. And there's a pretty decent card, Battle Grace Angel, but we'll just flashback or think twice here. No need to Vapor Snag quite yet. Maybe we find another answer. There's Brain Maggot, alright, so we get to Vapor Snag plus Brain Maggot if we want. We could also think twice first, as that might change our plan. If we draw... Alright, another think twice, so yeah, let's just Vapor Snag this now. And then play Brain Maggot and see if there's anything else we want to take besides the Angel. Nope, let's take the Angel. And attack for 4. Opponent has a Vanguard and a Paragon, which he can play both next turn, but our flyers don't really care about that. And we're now at 6 mana. Which means a top-decked land will allow us to cast our 7-drops. So there's both cards. Opponent still with 1 card left. And there's a land, so we could go for Demon here, but I think Sheoldred's good with having 2 cards in the graveyard there. And I think this reduces our opponent's outs a bit more. GG's. So let's attack for 4. Put the opponent to 6. And then play Sheoldred. Which should lock up the game. Our opponent could still technically go land into Planar Cleansing, I guess. But then we still have Rune-Scarred Demon left, so... There goes the Vanguard. 6 land into Arrest, alright. We'll stop Sheoldred, but we still have the 2 Specters. Opponents could attack, but then he takes 1 from Brain Maggot. So he's not in a great spot. We also get to get back our Rager here, I think. An attack for 2. Go down to 15. So if we draw Vapor Snag, we win. Let's get back Rager, as if we draw a land here, we can just Rune-Scarred for a Vapor Snag and close out the game right now. Alright, there's a land, Rune-Scarred Demon, find Vapor Snag, opponent loses 1 to the Vapor Snag and then takes 5 and he's dead. There it is. And there we go. So even if he did not attack, he would still have died the same. Alright, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's take a look at our opener. We have 2-drop into 3-drop on the draw here. It's not terrible. I think I'll keep. Could use some more action in the 3 to 5 drop range. But I guess we do have a Rune-Scarred Demon to work towards. So Think Twice would be a great draw. More Specters or Ragers would be great. A Graveborn Muse also good. Let's lead with our Necropolis. And Vapor Snag for interaction is also always a decent draw. Let's see what we're up against. Double island, so our opponent passing here likely means he's a more controlling deck. And here we have the option of going island into Strix. We could play the Guildgate to keep up Vapor Snag, but more importantly so we can make sure we can play Specter on 3. But if we just play island here, we can go Strix and then next turn go tap land into Think Twice and then play Specter on 4, which is still fine. And this kind of forces our opponent to counter this if he does have a counter. Looks like he doesn't. And if he is playing a control deck, resolving the Specter is a little more important, as that's a 2-for-1 in our favor. Alright, the blue-black could be the mirror match. Hopefully our opponent does not have Gargomazoas, because those are problematic for this deck. Alright, instead it's a Chasm Skulker, which can grow whenever our opponent draws a card. Luckily Vapor Snag means our opponent does not get the squid tokens, so at the moment we don't have to worry about it too much. So let's attack for 2 and then play the Guildgate and pass the turn with Vapor Snag and Think Twice up. Unfortunate that we drew yet another 7-drop, we don't have a lot of them, but at least we do have some stuff we can do early here. 4 lands, and that's gonna be another Chasm Skulker, alright. So we're just gonna take 2 here and Think Twice, as that's a little more mana efficient, and then next turn we can Specter and keep up Vapor Snag and perhaps snag the first Skulker. Swamp, alright. And Muse. That's interesting. I would like to get the Muse down, although playing Specter Vapor Snag is also pretty powerful, as that sets the opponent back quite a bit and also gives us another flyer to start attacking. Let's attack first, just in case our opponent has like a Ulcerate or something. Alright, 16. So yeah, let's just play the Specter here. Make our opponent discard. And keep up Vapor Snag and probably just Vapor Snag when he attacks. I'm not too worried about counter spells. Alright, there's Gargomazoa, which I'm glad our opponent did not play, because well, our 1 toughness flyers would have problems with Gargomazoa, maybe as a second one. Inspiration, alright. I guess might as well Vapor Snag now. So our opponent would be growing his Skulkers twice, which is pretty powerful. But now he only grows 1. Still a 4-4 here, so we might have to leave back these Strix on defense. Although that's not great, because then our opponent gets all the squid tokens. So we get whacked for 4 here. But we do get to hit for 4 back. although the life loss from the Muse will become a problem. Alright, Shadowborn Demon, I guess, is a pretty decent draw. Still gives our opponent the squid tokens, but I guess better now than later, as he would get even more. Still have the option of playing the Muse here, but I do like just playing the Demon. So opponent goes to 11 now. If we sacrifice another creature, our opponent could be going to 4 with an attack for 7. Although it is risky against bounce spells. Yeah, I think I do just kill the Skulker here. And pause the turn. Of course, the island walk is irrelevant, as we do have islands. So I'm not sure yet if I want to sacrifice one of our Elder Flyers to the Demon yet. Because if our opponent then bounces the Demon, then we just lost a creature, although we do then have a Demon. Probably depends what our opponent does here. We know he still has a Skulker in hand. And he drew a bunch of cards with Inspiration. We have 5 lands in play, so still pretty far away from casting our 7-drops. Opponent has his own Rune-Scarred Demon, which hopefully just kills our own Rune-Scarred, but it does not. Alright. I guess it's non-demon, so he couldn't target our demon. An attack for 3. And Demon does work nicely with those squid tokens, and with Chasm Skulker in general. I did consider playing Chasm Skulker in this deck, but the fact that the +1/+1 counters don't synergize with our Undying Evil meant I eventually did not end up playing Chasm Skulker. So here I think we just sacrifice our demon, as we just can't attack any of our opponent's demon, and otherwise we're just losing creatures. So opponent can attack us for 8. I think we still do play the Muse, as that increases our chances of finding another land for Rune-Scarred Demon or Sheoldred. We could think twice here, but I'm not sure what we're trying to find. So yeah, let's just play the Muse, play Guildgate, pass the turn. So having these 7-drops in hand did pose quite a bit of a problem, since we did not get to play anything else. But if we can survive long enough, maybe they do become relevant, and our opponent decided not to keep the Shadowborn Demon around, which is surprising, as he could have just sacrificed the squid token. But maybe he has other plans. Tribute to Hunger. Alright, let's just sacrifice our Specter here. Tapped out of black mana, and now taps out of blue for the Chasm Skulker. Alright, so we're not dead yet. We will take 3 here, going down to 8, and then 1 more from the Muse. Sheoldred not great against the squid tokens, but Rune-Scarred Demon can find something relevant. Alright, there's land, so what do we want to get with Rune-Scarred Demon? We could get, let's see, we could get a Brain Maggot to see what our opponent's working with. We could get more flyers, we could get another demon. Don't have any ways to gain life. Question here also, do we attack? I think we do, as we're not really blocking with the Muse anyways. Could also just play Sheoldred, which has Swamp Walk, which is relevant. And would also just get back a Shadowborn Demon, for example. Don't hate that, actually. Maybe playing Sheoldred is just better. I mean, sure, our opponent just gets to sacrifice a Squid token, but if Sheoldred survives, we get to get back Shadowborn Demon, which is pretty awesome, or the Specter. And this is unblockable for sure, while Rune-Scarred Demons maybe gets trumped by a flyer. So yeah, let's just play Sheoldred and hope for the best. We could definitely still lose this, but at least we've got a shot. So opponent deciding whether he wants to sack the Skulker or a Squid token, decides to sack a token. And the cool thing with the Demon is we also get to sack the Muse at some point. But looks like our opponents are Archaeomancering the, I'm guessing, the Tribute. Instead it's Inspiration, alright. Does our opponent have a third land here? Doesn't look like it. Kraken Hatchling, not too relevant here. An attack for 2 puts us to 5. So we get to play our Demon, which can take out either a Squid token or the Skulker. And I think it is the Demon here, as it can sack our Muse. And let's see, we would get hit for 2, go to 2, lose 1. So I think we do just kill a Squid token here over the Chasm Skulker, since we can just block this one. Alright, there's a Brain Maggot, which is a nice draw. We could also just play Rune-Scarred Demon. But I don't think Rune-Scarred Demon offers anything of relevance. So I think I think twice first. See what we get. Land, and then just play Brain Maggots, see what our opponent has. And Soul of Ravnica, not relevant. Dissolve, not relevant. Inspiration could be relevant. So I think I take the Inspiration. Never know, we might need the untapped lands next turn. So we can attack for Swamp Walk 6. And yeah, pause the turn. Opponent has to sack. If he sacks the Skulker, the token will have Summoning Sickness still, so that can't attack. So he can attack us for 1, we go to 3, then we go to 2 after the Muse. I don't think we have any zombies here, no. Soul of Ravnica is not relevant as this has Swamp Walk. And I think we got there. Go to 3 life. And let's get back the Specter. Opponent discards. And we could sack the Specter, but let's just sack the Muse here and attack with Sheoldred. Alright, so yeah, playing Sheoldred was definitely correct over playing the Rune-Scarred there. So I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.